Hey guys, so today I'm talking about 12 vegetables you can start in late summer, early autumn. It is September 2nd, so we still have time to do some planting of actual seeds. And I have some plants that I've already started from seed, so I'll get a little bit of a head start there. But it's not too late because all 12 of these vegetables can tolerate some really cold nighttime light frost. And if you have a hoop house or you want to cover it with like a plastic bottle, they can survive even longer if you start late. So depending on what zone you're in, that has a lot to do with if you've got time to start these vegetables. And I'll go over each one of them and what the minimum temperatures is and the best planting practice directly into the soil of your garden. So depending on what you want to do, I'm going to do some direct seeding, but I'm also going to put some seeds aside so I can do some indoor seeding in some unconventional methods. But also I've ordered some of these, and I've had many of these over the years, the little portable greenhouses that have the cell trays and the tray that it sits into, and also the greenhouse top that's adjustable. So you can order these from Amazon, and I'll put a link to them. Also, you could start seeds in something like this, just if you have it around the house, just a general container like this, fill it halfway with soil, moisten the soil, and put it in direct sunlight. You don't want it in a shady window. You want it in a window that gets a good bit of sunlight so you can get the seeds to germinate. Also, the kit, and if you're starting in springtime, you might need a heat mat. In the fall, I won't need that. So unless you keep the temperatures in your house really cold, like 71 or 70, you might want to use the heat mat indoors. But that's more of a springtime thing. So I'm going to start by showing you the seeds I've ordered, and we'll go from there with the details on each one of them. First, I want to talk about what zone you're in and the importance and how to look it up when your first frost is. So about determining when you want to plant, you want to talk about the time to your first frost, light frost. You have three types of frost that's going to come in the fall. You have your light, moderate, and a hard or severe frost. And the light frost would be around 29 to 32. 25 to 28 would be your moderate, and 24 or below would be your hard frost. And most of these plants can tolerate light frost. Some can even go down to the hard frost, the moderate frost. And then a few of these seeds can even tolerate a hard or severe frost. So there's a lot of different variables there, but in general, this is still okay to plant in the fall. Unless you're in an extremely cold environment, somewhere like extremely north, most of the zones you're going to be able to do this. So if you don't know the date of your first frost, mine is around the beginning of November to maybe around the middle of November. There's kind of a fuzzy area there. All these frost dates are estimates, and it depends a lot on what happens with your weather and what's going on weather-wise. There's two places where you can look this up. Is the NOAA website, which is noaa.gov, NOAA.gov, or the I think weather.gov also has the same exact information, weather.gov. So those two places are where you want to go online to find out your first frost date. I think you can go down and put your exact zip code in so you'll know exactly the date in your area. Now, elevation has a lot to do with it too. If you're up high on like a mountaintop or you're down in a valley, those two things can affect it too. So if you're down low or up high, that could also bring in a frost earlier or possibly hold it off and make it later. So you should know that if you've been in the area for a long time, but you can also do a little bit of research and find out exactly when that frost date is going to occur and what other variables are there. So I ordered these specifically because these are from Amazon, and specifically because they are 12 fall planting vegetables, cool season vegetables that can survive a lot of cold and actually probably prefer cold because heat can sometimes cause them to be more stressed. So I'm going to go through each one of them, and I'll open the packet and we'll just go through each one and maybe go out to the garden and plant a few of the ones that I've already started from seed. But this is the actual Amazon packet. There's 12 vegetables in there to start directly from seed. Like I said, I'm starting half outdoors and half indoors in different methods indoors. I'm going to try a few little experiments to see what works best. But this is the packet, and we'll get started. We'll get started with broccoli. Now, just a word to the wise, what's for sale today on Amazon may not be for sale in the future. So if this is not for sale, you can just look for a fall seeds pack. That is essentially what I've ordered. These are non-GMO. They're heirloom seeds, and there's even a little on the back there. You can see it's got the zone map that tells you what zone you're in the United States. And unfortunately, you'll have to look up online if you're in another area of the world, Canada or wherever. But it's pretty easy to find nowadays your zone. Just type in zone map, and that Google that and it'll bring you right to it. But anyways, they're non-GMO, they're heirloom, and these are all grown in the United States. So we'll start with broccoli, and the seeds are always very small. As far as I know, there's no giant broccoli seeds. And I'm gonna, like I said earlier, I'm gonna start these half indoors and half outdoors. I want to double my chances of success, and I'll use a different method. This seed kit also has these little tags you can write on and put in the ground. If you're starting indoors or outdoors, you can transfer them. They're plastic, so they don't melt away like paper would. But broccoli, you want to start either indoors or outdoors in a potting mix. Outdoors, you can just put a little bit of potting mix in your garden to help boost the success rate of the seeds that you're going to sow. You want to plant them a 1/4 inch deep. You want to keep the soil moist, and it's among one of the hardiest vegetables. It tolerates down to 24 degrees. So this vegetable can tolerate some really cold temperatures, and it'll grow well into, in my area, it'll go well into the end of November. So the second one we're going to talk about is cauliflower. Also, the seeds are very similar to the broccoli. They're really small, and you can see them quite well. I'm doing a half-half. I'm doing half in the garden in the ground and half indoors, so I can double my chances. On the back of these, there's also a digital growing guide. There's advice for planting, the days to harvest. That really helps a lot. But cauliflower is, you're going to plant it about 1/2 inch to 3/4. You can do this in September, so you got plenty of time. You're going to just do it in regular garden soil. It's a very hardy plant, and the minimum temperature on broccoli is 24 degrees. So it's really great. And so this is one I highly recommend, is broccoli. Excuse me, not broccoli, cauliflower. I'm getting my two plants mixed up there. So that's cauliflower number 2. Our third fall vegetable is cabbage, and you're going to just plant that in some seed starting soil. I'll talk about that in a little bit because I bought several bags of different varieties of seed start soil. And we're going to plant these a 1/4 inch deep. We want to keep the soil evenly moist, and the minimum temperature on these is about 24 degrees. So you've got a lot of time, if you're in most of the United States, to plant these, and you should be able to get a harvest in it's like 65 to 75 days. This is the great thing about this. It gives you a lot of information on the back along with the growing guide. So let's move on to the next one. After talking about cabbage, we're going to talk about kale. That is here. So kale is a great, really healthy thing. I like to make put it in smoothies along with some other stuff, strawberries, and just improve the taste there. But it's great for your smoothies and just to eat in a salad. You're going to plant these a 1/4 of an inch deep, about 3 inches apart. Keep the soil moist. This will survive down to 24 degrees, and some varieties of kale will survive even lower. So it is a great cool weather plant and an early winter plant that you can harvest through some really cold weather. Okay, the pea, and in this case, this is a Oregon sugar pod pea. And so these seeds are very fresh. And so I'm going to try to get this open right here. They're not, this particular variety is not a demanding variety. It's very easy to grow. And there's no support needed for this pea. It is a bush pea. It grows about 36 to 48 inches tall. You're going to plant this 1 inch deep, about 3 inches apart, and the minimum temperature on these is about 20 degrees. So you've got plenty of time to plant these in the garden, and you should be able to harvest well, at least into my area, probably into December. Okay, the next thing we're talking about is Brussels sprouts. This particular variety is Long Island Brussels sprouts. You're going to plant these a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch deep. You're going to sow them 18 to 24 inches apart. Your row separation is going to be about 30 inches, so you want to give them some room to grow. Their minimum temperature is about 20 degrees Fahrenheit for short periods, so it will survive really far below freezing. For me, that would put me well into December. The romaine lettuce is next. Very small seeds. You're going to sow these as late as, and I'm still a ways from this, but sow 6 weeks before your first frost. You're going to sow 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch deep. You're going to cover with a fine layer of compost. Most varieties of this particular lettuce will survive down to 20 degrees. Again, that would cover a long time for me, so I should be able to harvest some of this. Next is the sweet onion. And the sweet onion, you're actually planting this now for next summer. And they say that by planting this in the fall, you're going to have a larger onion and a sweeter onion. So this is something you're doing far in advance, but you're going to plant this 4 to 6 weeks before your first frost, and it's going to allow it to become established over the winter time. So you're planting now, but you're planting for next summer. And like I said, the onions, they say, are sweeter by planting them earlier rather than doing it in the spring. So this is going to be a long-term plant that you're going to grow. Number 9 is your beets. This is the variety of this is Detroit, if I can get this out, Detroit dark red. You're going to soak these in water for about 2 hours, plant them 1 inch deep and 1 inch apart. Your rows are going to be about 1 to 2 feet apart, and you're going to plant these 6 weeks before your first frost. And this is semi-hardy, and it can survive a light frost. So not a hard frost, but maybe 30, 32, 31, 30, just a light frost. So the next thing we're talking about, or the next vegetable seed we're talking about, is the turnip purple top. You're going to sow these 1 inch deep, rows 18 to 24 inches apart. You're going to thin them to every 4 to 6 inches. They're hardy to about 25 degrees. And a lot of people don't like turnips, but I actually do. Now, you wouldn't think of this as being a fall vegetable because we're so late into the summer. But what I've done last year is I planted some pumpkin seed, and I actually harvested these right before Halloween to have a miniature jack-o'-lantern. So you can also, these are the best for a pie. These are sugar pumpkin, and they say it's great for pumpkin pie. So you'll be cutting it really close because they are not as frost tolerant. The minimum temperature on these is going to be about 32 degrees before it destroys most of the plant. So you're going to plant these about 1 inch deep, 18 to 36 inches apart, and the rows quite a bit larger. So you may just only have 1 row in your garden if you're in a raised box bed, 6 to 10 feet apart on that because it needs a lot of room to grow. So these are more of a novelty for me, not really for eating because I'm running out of time. So maybe just a Halloween jack-o'-lantern for me. The last thing is kohlrabi. I can't pronounce this easily, but this is in the broccoli family. You're going to plant these in 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch deep, 2 inches apart. Your rows are going to be about 12 inches apart, and you're going to thin to, I'd say, about 5 to 8 inches, and it tolerates down to 32 degrees. So that's the 12 vegetables I'm starting this year. Some of them I'm going to be starting in planters inside. Another way that I'm going to preview in a video, it's a little bit unorthodox, but it actually works great. It gives a head start. So that's going to be in an upcoming video. So this is one of my favorite seed starting mixes, and it's made by Jiffy, and it is peat moss, coconut coir, and vermiculite, and it's extremely light and extremely fine, and it's great for starting seeds. It holds moisture great, but this is one that I would highly recommend. I really like it. I can use it in my cell trays, and that really works great. The second type is horticultural vermiculite, and it's got a few things mixed with it. This helps improve the aeration because it's so extremely light. Now, I believe I misspoke there about the horticultural vermiculite. I don't just, it's not already pre-mixed. So what I do is I mix peat moss with it for seed starting. So that's one thing that I may have misspoke there. I want to make sure you understand that it's not pre-mixed. You want to mix it yourself. 50-50 mix, 50% horticultural vermiculite and 50% peat moss. Lastly is the Miracle Grow potting mix, and it also states it's a seed starting mixture. But for me, this looks more like just an extremely light potting soil, not a lot of difference. So I think I'm going to go with my first pick, which was the one that has the peat moss, coconut coir, and vermiculite. That's my favorite. So I'm going to demonstrate some seed planting in the tray, and then we'll move on away from talking about the potting mixes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the natural and organic brand, Jiffy brand seed starting mix. I'm going to put these in my cells. Extremely, extremely light. But I think I like this one a lot better than the other two. I'm just going to spread that out across the cells. And I might do a little bit of compaction so I can top it with just a very thin layer. We just want to keep it moist, keep the lid on it for humidity. And I'm probably going to make a giant mess as I always do, but I'm just trying to get this in there quickly. And I will have to probably use 2 trays as this tray has, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'm wanting to fill up each row with its own set of seeds. So I'm just going to try to smooth this out. Being left-handed, I am always messy. That's at least what my dad always said. I was always very messy being a left-handed person. But I try. Okay, now we've smoothed this out. I'm going to compress each one of these so I can top it put the seed in and then top it with a little bit more of the seed starting mix. So I'm going to take my irrigation screwdriver and just lightly tap on each cell just to compress it just a little bit. This screwdriver is the perfect size because I can make just a little round hole to drop my seed in. And it's probably going to be a little bit more shallow than it would be in the garden because I don't have to worry so much about birds or washing out or anything like that. So I'm just going to press down on each one of these so I can bring a seed in to each one. And then we can move on from there. Okay guys, so rather than demonstrate each one of these, I'm just going to show you the first row and then I'll go in and finish all of these and show you exactly how it's going to end up. But I'm starting the first row, I'm just doing one seed type in each row. I've got 8 rows so I can fill a pretty good bit of the seed, but I'm not going to use but maybe half or less than half. So that's the broccoli. That way I know what's in that row. Let's see if I can find the broccoli. Okay, and I'm only going to put a few seeds in each one, so I'm going to carefully pour these into my hand and put 2 or 3 seeds in each hole, maybe hitting a little bit more than 3. And then I'm going to come back and top it with an extremely thin layer of the Jiffy pot, the seed starter mix. I'm just going to do it very lightly, and then I'm going to moisten the soil when I'm finished with this. So that's how I'm going through with each seed type and putting it in its own row. And so I'll label each one of these, and then I'll do some magic editing where you'll see the finished product. Then we'll move out to the garden for some direct seeding in the ground, and so we're going to have this, an alternate method of planting that I'm going to show in a future video, and then the garden and this tray right here is going to be today, but the alternate method indoors is what I want to show you in a future video. All right, I've got everything planted, my 8 first starter plants here. The first 8 I'm going to deal with. I've labeled them so I know what's in each row. I'm going to cover it with the rest of the Jiffy potting mix. Just going to kind of spread that out. I'm not going to put it too deep, but everybody in here is about 1/2 inch deep. And so if I was doing this outdoors, it might be, and some of them may be deeper, some of them not as deep, but I'm just going to try to be very careful about spreading that across and covering that, and it's going to be lightly misted. Put a little bit more there. And we're going to have, this is going inside near a window, so it'll have really nice humidity. Our temp is usually about 73 in our house, so I don't think I'm going to need the heating mats. Although, if it was the dead of summertime and it's too close to an AC vent, it might inhibit a little bit of the germination. So I would just make sure that you put it next to a window and not close to an AC vent if you're starting this in the fall in a warmer month. So there we go. That's our top. Once we get these mist watered, we're going to put our top on. There's an adjustable humidity thing here on top, so I'm going to make sure that's completely closed. I want maximum humidity. I don't want any of the moisture to escape. I'm going to tape both sides to make sure this doesn't accidentally come off or get knocked off by one of our my wife's cats. So we'll do that to make sure they don't decide they want to play in our humidity box here. And I'm going to water that now. One more thing before I do the watering, I'm going to show you, this is the tray, the drip tray. Each one of these cells have a small hole in it, so it can drain into the drip tray. But I still don't want to overwater. I don't want this to be too soggy, but I want it at the same time to have even moisture. So I just want to let you know that if you do order that particular brand, the one I'm putting in the link, each one of these has a hole in it, so it can drain into the drip tray. And so just make sure you don't overwater. What I'm going to do is, before I water, I'm going to add a little bit of Bloom Plus to it. And this is just a very small amount. Excuse me. I don't want to put much in there, but there's a very high phosphorus amount, so maybe just a 1/4 of a teaspoon, just a very small amount. But I want to encourage that root growth. And so I'm going to do that before I misspray. I'm going to get all these packets so I don't get those soaking wet. And that's the 4 we've yet to plant. So I'm going to take my mister. And this is great. I really like this over the manual hand sprayer. I do use that a lot, but I use this even more. I'm just going to do a charge on this. And I'm going to water from above in a mist. Then I'm going to come in with my watering can and water a little bit on the side, so there'll be just a tiny amount of standing water in the base, and that'll pretty quickly be absorbed into the soil mixture. And I just want to make sure I get water on the top and allow that wicking action from below to come in and further. Okay, I don't want to put too much there. Just want it to be just a little bit, and it's going to just soak in the soil. I'll find my watering can and water just a little bit from the side, and then we'll be ready to tape it and secure it and put it in the house near a sunny window, not a southern window, but maybe a west or east where it's not sun all day. You just don't want it to overheat, because inside these greenhouses it can get really hot. So maybe a partially shaded window. All right, I'm going to put a little bit, maybe, I'd say maybe less than a cup, maybe half a cup, I don't know, but I just want to put it where there's water all the way across. I'm going to check the opposite side and make sure. We'll see some water down there. If not, I'll just add some to this side, so that can have that wicking action through the bottom of each one of these cells. And I think we have just about a 1/4 inch of standing water there, so that's going to provide perfect amount of humidity. I'm going to put the humidity dome on, and I'm going to tape it because I don't want it to be knocked off by one of our mischievous cats. And you would be amazed at what cats, if you don't have a cat, you'll be amazed at what cats can get into. All right, and there we go. So that's the first 8 seedlings. I'm going to move out into the garden and plant a few seeds out there. And so this is ready to head inside. And I'll just make sure it doesn't have too much water. If it does have too much water, I can carefully lift the cell tray out and drain some of the water off to make sure it's not just totally saturated. But this should be okay, but I'll double check it tonight before I go to bed and tomorrow, just to make sure that the soil is not overly soggy. We just want it evenly moist. Okay guys, so I've added some soil to this bed that was previously growing cucumbers early in the year, but they have seen better days and went on to their final resting place in the compost heap. But anyways, I'm going to take my garden rake after I've added the soil, and I'm going to tamp this down lightly, and then I'm going to come in and add peat moss to the top, so we'll have a nice area, a good seed starting bed. I don't want to use any of my expensive seed starting mix because this is such a large bed. It would just be too expensive and too financially prohibitive to do that with every single bed out here. And most of these beds are, I think the summer garden is gone, and that's when we're going to start focusing on the fall garden. So I'm going to work on that, and then we'll top this with the peat moss. Okay guys, I'm adding my peat moss now, and it may be a little lumpy. It's very humid here, so it probably needs to be broken up a little bit there. But I'm just going to carefully throw it across the garden, so we'll have a good seed starting mix here. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do to the bed soil is I'm going to put in just a light dusting of black cow composted manure. And so I just want to make sure the seeds have a really good nutritious soil to start out in. So I'm just going to toss this throughout the garden. I'm not putting a thick layer. This is just a very light dusting, but I'll put that all over the garden. And so the plants that we're planting here today will have a much better head start on an earlier than I'm hoping for in the late autumn or early winter harvest can start. Okay guys, so this bed is ready for our fall planting. We're going to have kale, cabbage, cauliflower, and broccoli. And it's going to be a crowded bed. So I'm going to divide it into 4 areas, and they're going to be growing really close together. But I've got a lot of stuff I want to do with the winter garden, so I want to keep everything compacted. So I'm going to put these in the ground, show you how it looks at the end, and that will be our fall and early winter harvest. Hey guys, so I've got everything planted in this bed. This is the first of many beds I'm going to be planting because I want this fall harvest and early winter harvest to be the best I've ever had. So I'm going to water this carefully. I'm going to monitor it each day. I might hook up a oversprayer, which I normally don't like to overspray. I like watering at the base of each plant, each one of those spray heads only allows me to do 9 plants in a particular bed. So I may have to make these oversprays because there's so many in here. So I just want to say thanks for watching. I really appreciate each subscriber. We're hitting milestones for me every day. For some larger YouTubers, they would see it as not very big, but it's important to me because I know each one of you is interested enough to listen and watch to see what I have to say each day or each video. So I really appreciate that. So I'm going to finish watering this in. The cicadas are going crazy out here. I hope I'm not being drowned out, but it's the end of the day and I'm going to do this and just want to say thank you and please like and subscribe if you would. Have a great day.